This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Now, we had Dr. Alan Lichtman on the program the other day. Obviously, he is a pretty accomplished guy in the world of academia, but he's also developed a little bit of a niche in terms of being known as the Nostradamus of political prognostication. And he claims to have predicted, using his keys to the White House, every presidential election since 1984. Nate Silver has sort of a different methodology. His methodology is based on polling, and he called a lot of models that a lot of elections that people felt like he shouldn't have been able to get right, and he got them right. Some elections he also got wrong, namely the 2016 election. But someone who says both of their methodologies are somewhat flawed is Dr. Louis Perron. He is a global political strategist and author. He's got a new book out which will teach you how to beat an incumbent if you're running against one of the most difficult things to do in politics. And he's kind enough to join us live from, I believe, Switzerland. Dr. Perron, it's great to talk with you.
A wonderful good morning to New York. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's great to have you. You are indeed in Switzerland, right?
Yes, absolutely. In Zurich,
Wonderful.
Where it's now 9:30.
Outstanding.
In the morning.
I'm a big fan of Swiss cheese. I can only imagine how good the Swiss cheese is in Switzerland, so I'm envious. All right. I want to pick your brain. We'll talk about your book, but I want to pick your brain on a number of issues related to political analysis. Let's begin with two of the fellas that I just alluded to. Let's start with Nate Silver. He's considered the guru of polling. In your opinion, what's wrong with Nate Silver and his method of predicting elections?
Well, but both fellows that you've mentioned are obviously smart and worth listening to, but then it's up to us to make the best out of it, right? That's my argument also in my latest YouTube video about the two. Now, for Nate, or for polling specifically, I have reservations because in the U.S., the market seems difficult for polling. Polling was off several cycles in a row. And I think you guys use, at times at least, ridiculous small sample sizes. I find it amusing how pundits zealously discuss minor changes that really don't matter. And I also actually think it's ill-advised to look at averages of polling, which has become so common without questioning it. And I think there are good reasons to question that. And lastly, I also have reservations about the weighing, because in the U.S. it's very common to weigh the raw data. And if you weigh the raw data, you already admit that you can't do really random sampling, which is, of course, the key and the heart of polling.
Interesting. Now, that makes sense to me, and you said it better than I ever could, but it's part of the reason why I actually don't talk about polls on the radio, and I find it to be a total waste of time for many of the reasons that you just alluded to. Now, let's talk about Dr. Alan Lichtman. He's clearly put a lot of effort into developing what he calls the keys to the White House. He says it's basically flawless, it's science, it's not subjective. Here's a little bit of him joining me a few days ago, explaining how the keys to the White House work.
The keys gauge the fundamental forces about how elections really work. That is, votes up or down on the strength and performance of the White House party. Imagine that. It's governing, not campaigning, that counts. And the keys gauge that strength and performance.
At 30 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. So, Dr. Perron, what's wrong with Dr. Alan Lichtman and his model?
a lot is right with his model, and I write about him actually extensively in my book, Beat the Incumbent. That said, there are things that I would question. For example, I mean, if campaigning has no value in general election, then how are primaries decided? And I would also argue that at least part of his keys, for example, whether one or not has charisma, whether there is an inter-party challenger, whether there is a third-party candidate, it depends at least partially on campaigning. And then lastly, and that's my, I think with very respect to this election, where I think he could potentially go wrong, is that I think his model is a little bit short on inflation. I mean, he does have two keys that pertain to the economy, but it's economic growth. And I just happen to think that inflation is politically extremely dangerous. And here's why. If you have unemployment or the economy is not doing well, maybe 10% of the people are concerned about it, maybe 20, maybe another 10 are worried about it, but it's limited. But inflation, everyone feels it. It's an issue. It may not be existential for everybody, but everyone feels it. And by the way, I do a lot of work in Asian countries around the globe. It's the same thing everywhere. Inflation is brutal politically.
Everything you said seems to make a lot of sense to me. He's pretty accessible, I'm sure, and you're obviously very well known. Has he responded to any of your criticism of his model?
I haven't heard. I haven't heard from him. And again, I mean, I'm would love to have a discussion. I'm not saying it's all wrong. Actually, there's a lot of it is right. But I'd be curious to hear what he thinks about the things, my reservations.
Yeah. No, next time he comes on the program, I'll either ask him or maybe I can even try and get the two of you to come on together. Now, I'm going to try and pin you down the same way that I pinned Alan Lichtman down. If you were to make an election prediction on the U.S. presidential election at this point, what would your prediction be?
I think it's obviously a very close election. I wrote that in Newsweek months ago. In terms of predicting the race, basically what the surveys tell us is it's close. I think any pollster could get lucky, but you cannot really predict the race with polling. If it's my gut feel, honestly, Trump doesn't feel like the future to me. And the U.S. I've known when I stayed and lived there was always a country very much concerned about the future. So if I had to bet my last Swiss franc, I would probably bet on Harris, but I could easily be wrong on that one. I'm not claiming to really be good at predictions because remember, my job is to win elections, not to predict them.
Got it. That makes sense. You've worked on making presidents, not just predicting elections. So, by the way, if you were advising either of these candidates, how much do you think either or both of them should even care about the polling when the results, for the reasons that you've cited, can be so unpredictable?
Polling is very valuable, not to predict the race, but as a basis to make informed decisions. Who you should reach, what your message should be, what tools to use. And in this race, I would actually be very interested to look at qualitative data. I work a lot with focus group discussions. Remember, surveys tell you the numbers. Focus groups tell you the why behind the numbers. So if I were advising either one of them, I would do a lot of focus groups, in particular with men, because now it seems to me this race is really down to men. I would do groups with black men, with Hispanic men, with white men, and see what really drives them. Because I think for Trump, the reaching out to suburban women would have been great 6 months ago, but that ship has sailed. Right. It's now really, that ship has sailed. I mean, it's down to men, and for Kamala Harris as well, because I think that's her major weakness.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Understood. If you're just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. My guest is Dr. Louis Perron, a globally regarded political strategist that advised campaigns all over the world. He's also of a new book, which we're going to talk about in a moment, called Beat the Incumbent. Dr. Perron, in terms of what you need to do to win an election, and I know you've helped people win a lot of elections, do you need to do the same things in every election? Do I use the same playbook in an election for city council or local alderman as I would for governor, senator, or president of the United States?
Well, every campaign is different. Every campaign is the same. And I think what Napolitan, the father of political consulting, meant when he said it is that I think the approach is the same, and my book is really about the fundamentals of winning an election. It's not about the Band-Aid or the latest buzz. It's really a step-by-step process about fundamentally how to win elections. Now, the tools, the mix of tools, of course, is different at the local level than at the national level. The tone and the message would be different. You don't give a convention speech in front of thousands of people when you run for a state representative, right? And the message, anyways, should always in every campaign be different. But the elements of sound strategy, I think, are surprisingly similar, including at the international level.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask. If I'm running for office in Italy, do I use a different playbook than if I'm running for office in Canada?
It's different in the sense that the electoral system is different, and you need to understand the dynamics of it. Maybe the tools available are different because there are countries, for example, you can't buy TV ads. Hard to imagine in the U.S., but that's how it is. Funding is different. But still, the key things I write about, and I write about campaigns from all over the world, are actually surprisingly similar. The need for a message, how you find the right message, how to put together a campaign team, how to do a right targeting strategy. It's the same. And by the way, my book has just reached top 100 on Amazon.com among election books.
Well, congratulations. Very impressive. I'm looking forward to reading it as someone that's worked on a lot of campaigns myself and found a lot of the books written about campaign practice lacking. In terms of Beat the Incumbent, that's the book. People could check it out on your website or on Amazon or elsewhere. What are you hoping people learn from this? Is this a book that's primarily geared towards candidates, political consultants, political operatives, or can anybody that's interested in civics or public affairs, can they learn something from it as well?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, the main audience are people who want to run or who work with somebody who wants to run. But I think it's also of great interest for people who just want to know more about elections. And I think it's always easy to have the perfect explanation after the election of why somebody won or lost. My book tries to go be more systematic and more objective and make more generally applicable lessons learned. And so, absolutely. I mean, my publisher said, by the way, it's Radius Book Group in New York. He said, like, I can't look at the book. I can't look at politics the same way anymore now that I've read your book. So give us one or two pro tips that if someone listening is running for office, and we actually do have a pretty wide listenership among public officials in different parts of the country. If someone's running for office, give us one or two things they should do in order to make their candidacy a successful one. The message is number one. And I think many candidates waste a lot of money on material, whether it's a billboard or a leaflet or a TV ad, depending on the level, on materials that don't really have political content. A message has to be short, simple, and understandable, but still, people do vote to make a political statement. So I think a lot of money is wasted on ego, on ego shows that don't really have content and a political message. Number one. Number two, I think many new candidates overestimate themselves because they're new to this. They find it very exciting, and everybody they talk to tells them that they should run and that they will win. A lot of it is just being polite, and I found in the book, I write in the book, like many first-time candidates overestimate their own appeal.
Well, that anecdotally, I can tell you, I've definitely observed that on a local level. You know, I'm curious, given your deep experience in campaign strategy, is there a particular election result that completely defied all the data and your expectations? And if so, can you share what election that was?
Well, I think 2016 was a pretty good example. No, I mean the Donald Trump's election. Yes, there were a few people who expected it, but I think the majority was really surprised, including myself, to be honest. I mean, I was actually sitting in a radio studio at the time, already preparing the newsletter the other morning on how Hillary won, and in the middle of the night, I realized. It's not going to work out that way. And that's when I decided to myself, I stopped listening to other pundits a few days before the election.
So you've said essentially that predicting election outcomes is less important than figuring out how to win an election. And I would absolutely agree with you based on everything you've said here. And you've outlined a couple of the key strategies that you've seen can make a real difference. Let's say there's a seat with no incumbent. It's an open seat, and both candidates read your book and take your instructions to the letter. Who wins? Who wins if both candidates happen to do everything right?
Well, there is a party identity, right? I mean, some races, even if you do everything right, maybe because you're not in the dominant party in that place, it's just very hard to overcome it, right? And then there is also the candidate himself or herself that matters. I mean, I think that personality really matters in politics. In the end, we vote for people. And so there are just good, appealing candidates, and there are candidates who lack campaign skills. There's a little bit you can do about it, and I write about it in the book, but it's limited, right? So even if you do everything right, You still need the macro trend and party ID on your side, and there's limits to what you can do as with respect to campaign skills.
With all of the media attention and the media focus on polling, which I think is just absurd, do you think that the media's reliance on polls impacts voter behavior and the perceptions of a race? And could it even, maybe unintentionally, maybe even intentionally, could it sway the outcome?
Well, political scientists have filled libraries talking about that question and probably have come to the conclusion that it doesn't really impact the vote, at least in the Western world. It may be different in other countries. Now, things are continuously changing and evolving. I'm not sure, though, how much attention average normal voters really pay to the polls. So, but I mean, again, look, the media doesn't really want. I mean, being accurate is good and welcome, but actually more important is the headline, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I think a lot of polls in the media, are to be taken with a grain of salt, because the goal there is not to win a prize for being the most accurate. The goal is to have something to talk about and have a headline. Outlier polls get over proportional attention, and that's because why?
You know, and I've noticed on partisan media, liberal networks love showing any poll that portrays Trump in a negative light, and conservative outlets love doing the exact opposite. And if you only get your news or your analysis from those stations, you'd have a totally skewed perspective on how the election is actually going. So that's interesting. Given the ever-changing political landscape and variables like voter turnout, economic conditions, social issues, do you believe that polling models, which you don't seem to have a high opinion of already, do you believe that polling models will become even less accurate over time? Should we be preparing for a future where polling has little or no predictive value?
We're already there, I think, especially given how close these elections are. I remember after the last election, there was an effort to say by pollsters, we've learned our lessons, we'll do it better this time. Let's see if that's really true. Sometimes I have a suspicion that pollsters, after having underestimated Trump for several cycles in a row, I have a feeling now they may be overestimating him. That's actually what happened in Europe when we had the populist right-wing parties. First, they were underestimated. After a while, pollsters overestimated them. I mean, I would be very interested to see raw data, right? Not weighted, no weighing, just the raw data. Why not do an experiment where you go house to house and do interviews in person? Mm. I think it's actually the most accurate way to do a poll. House to house, in person, no weighing. That would be an experiment I would be very curious to see.
Wow, very interesting. Louis Perron, he is the author of Beat the Incumbent. You can get it. Proven Strategies and Tactics to Win Elections, whether you're running for office or working on a political campaign or just interested in politics. Certainly seems like a book that's worth reading. I'm going to make sure that I have a chance to read it. Dr. Perron, thanks so much for the time this morning. I hope we can talk again.
Thank you for having me, and a wonderful night.
Thank you. You can check out the book. It's called Beat the Incumbent, Proven Strategies to Win Elections. If you want to comment on any portion of our discussion, you could certainly give me a call. You can also comment on anything else we've covered. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
If you're having problems with your septic system and you're tired of spending so much money each year to have it pumped, then SeptiClean is the answer for you. SeptiClean is an advanced specially formulated blend of bacteria used in the treatment of home and commercial septic systems. The breakdown of waste in your system relies on biological activity of naturally occurring bacteria. SeptiClean restores the natural biological process in your septic system and boosts the existing biological activity. SeptiClean is completely safe on all plumbing and can help prevent expensive emergencies in pumping. SeptiClean has approximately 6 to 100 times the bacteria count of other leading off-the-shelf brands in a 1-year supply. SeptiClean comes in a water-soluble pack, which you flush down the toilet once a month with no mess or stress. Save time, money, and maintenance on your septic system. Find SeptiClean at Emporium True Value Hardware on Main Street in Sag Harbor or visit micro-tab.com. That's micro-tabb.com. Micro-tabb.com.